Kia ora, my name is Julia Rose and I'm the Partnerships Manager at the Christchurch Foundation. I'm really excited to share another one of our inspired conversations, and today it's with the lovely Kaila Colbin. Welcome, Kaila.
Kia ora.
I've been really excited to talk to you today.
I'm excited to talk to you. Happy to be here.
It's great. I'll just highlight a few of Kaila's incredible career so far. She's currently the CEO of Boma, New Zealand. She's also one of the founders and trustees of the Ministry of Awesome. She's a climate project ambassador who trained with Gore. And after training with Brené Brown, she is a Dare to Lead certified facilitator and has since worked with hundreds of people to increase courage as a core skill. And that's where I wanted to start today, Kaila, because we all know that many people and certainly a lot of women suffer from what's called imposter syndrome, where they feel that they lack the courage to speak up or to stand out. But if we want to have more Kate Shepherds in our city, and I think we certainly do, then that's probably a core competency that we're going to need to inspire in the next generation. So how do you encourage people to be more courageous?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing I would address is, and I'm aware this is a Women's Fund podcast or video, but I do want to address the myth that it's women in particular who suffer from this. And I'll tell you a little story to highlight what I mean. So when I first did my training with Brené, came back to the region, and a few months later, I got the opportunity to speak at an event in Australia, an innovation festival called Amplify. It's a week-long event, and I had 3 speaking slots over the course of the week. And I did my first 2 talking about courage, and I got to the 3rd one, and Ruben, the event organizer, came out to me and he said, "Kaila, you're not going to believe who we've got speaking after you." And I said, "Who is it?" And I don't tend to fangirl all that much. So, I do a lot of public speaking. I'm like, okay, who's it going to be? And he goes, "It's Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield." And I was like, "What? Are you kidding? Chris Hadfield? He's amazing, right?" Like the guy who did Major Tom from the space station. Thank goodness he's going after me. I would hate to follow him. Who's going before me? And he says, "Oh, it's retired 4-star General Stanley McChrystal." And I was like, "Are you freaking kidding?" Like Stanley McChrystal is a leadership legend. Talk about courage, right? And so I'm going, what am I going to say about this, following on from General Stanley McChrystal? And he gets up and he gives his talk. He speaks for an hour about leadership. And Adam, the MC, gets up when he's done and he says, "Great talk, but I will say we've been hearing quite a lot about courage already this week from Kaila, but clearly, General, when you're talking about courage, it's at a whole nother level, right?" And do you know what he said? He said, "I'll tell you what, it is far easier to be brave on the battlefield than it is to be brave in the boardroom."
Wow.
He said he's known guys who have been on the front line 20, 30 years who wouldn't hesitate to pick up a weapon against an enemy because that's what they're trained to do, but whose voice would shake just as much as yours or mine if they had to say a hard truth to someone they respected. And so the first thing I want to say in response to your question is that this stuff does not discriminate. Doesn't discriminate by gender, doesn't discriminate by experience, doesn't discriminate by toughness. Being courageous is hard for everyone. That's the first thing. And then your question was, okay, so given that it's hard for everyone, how can we cultivate it? And the way that we cultivate it is by understanding it. And the first thing to understand is that we often have this kind of mistaken idea about courage, that it's, there are courageous people and there are people who just aren't that brave. And, we'll say that about ourselves, right? "Oh, I'd love to do what you do, but I'm just not that brave." And the really critical thing to understand is that courage is not something you either have or you don't. It is a muscle. It is a muscle that we can work, develop, and grow. It comprises 4 very specific, very tangible skill sets that are teachable, measurable, and observable. And the more we understand them, the more we can begin to practice being courageous so that we can get better at it and showing up that way in all of our endeavors.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think that's really, really important to point out, that it's definitely not just women. And yeah, that is a silly myth, actually. We're all in the same boat. We all need to practice. So yes, it's a good reminder. Thank you. Speaking of being courageous, as I mentioned, you're the CEO of Boma, New Zealand, and Boma certainly has some bold ambitions. So you state that you're going to support the community to be more intentional and intelligent about the future that we're creating. And now certainly a time for us to be ambitious and intentional and intelligent about making some changes where a world is sort of surviving a pandemic. So what is your focus on at the moment at Boma?
Yeah, it's it's a great question, and any entrepreneurs watching this will relate to the fact that the number one challenge of the entrepreneur is focus and prioritization. So at Boma, our primary focus is what we call transformational learning experiences, and those can look a few different ways. So we have a portfolio of kind of corporate training offerings, not only corporate, but training offerings. They include our Transformational Executives program that's designed for senior executives of medium to large companies. They include our Transformational Directors program, which is for anybody with a governance role. And they include the Dare to Lead program, which is the courage building work that I learned through Brené. So each of those is an offering, an interactive workshop type offering. They range from 2 to 3 days, and they sit at what we call the nexus of what you need to know and who you need to be. And what we mean by that is what you need to know is all of the external things that are happening. So the pandemic, but also exponentially accelerating technologies and disruptive business models and new strategic frameworks. So all of the things that from outside that we need to understand in order to be effective leaders going into the future. And then the who you need to be is all of the internal stuff. So that's the courage building work, values, ethics, really deciding how we want to show up in the world, not only as individuals, but as leaders within our organizations and our communities. And then in addition to those training programs, our transformational learning experiences also encompass larger scale events. And so one of the things we're working on right now is the second iteration of a major event called Grow. We ran it for the first time last year. It's focused on the future of food and fiber in Aotearoa. And we're looking to be running that for the second time in 2021. So that's certainly keeping us busy.
It sounds like it certainly would, and they sound like fantastic programs that I'd love to join one day.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you on.
Yeah. Changing tack a little bit, I wanted to ask you a bit more about your perspective on Christchurch, because you speak English, obviously, Italian, Spanish, you're from New York. You could probably live in a million different places, and yet here you are in Christchurch. So I was interested to hear more about what was so magic about Ōtautahi for you and why you've chosen to make it home.
I'm so happy to be able to answer this because Ōtautahi Christchurch is definitely my Turangawaewae. So I moved here in 2005 with my now ex-husband, who is a wonderful man, Michael O'Day, to whom I will be eternally grateful for introducing me to this city and this country. And it took me a while to get settled here, to start to understand that there was a much bigger cultural difference than I had been anticipating. In hindsight, that seems obvious, but at the time it wasn't. And so it took me a while to kind of find my feet. And in 2012 was a moment where I kind of was faced with having to make a really explicit and intentional choice. And what happened in 2012 was that my marriage came to an end. I stepped down from a role that I had held for several years. I didn't yet have a new role. My mother back in New York, her health wasn't very good. We have a family business in New York that needed a fair amount of attention. And it was effectively a moment where all of the things tying me to Ōtautahi, tying me to Aotearoa, New Zealand, had kind of come to a natural end. And there were lots of things calling me back to the United States. And that was really the moment for me where I decided that I was home, that I didn't want to go back. And this was where I wanted to be. And I have never looked back from it. I feel so privileged to live here. I feel so privileged to live in Aotearoa, full stop, but so privileged to live in Ōtautahi. It's such a wonderful city. It is big enough to have super interesting things, but small enough to feel like everybody cares about each other. And there's a bit of a family feel to it. And the access to the outdoors. We live right by the beach. I'm a big East Side girl. I can't understand how the East Side is not the most primo part of town imaginable. We every day we look out at the water from our house, and can't believe that this is the lifestyle we can live. Nowhere in the world would we be able to kind of do this. And so I just feel like we are the luckiest people on the planet to be here. And I couldn't be more of a champion for this city.
That's so wonderful to hear, and I can just really echo everything you say. I'm also new to Christchurch, and I just thought it was such a neat city and such an opportunity for all the exciting change that's in our midst. So I'm really excited to be part of Christchurch as well. So
nice.
You re-inspire me to love Christchurch.
Nice.
Really
Team
nice.
Christchurch represent.
Yeah, that's right. So finally, I read that your purpose in life is to be an uplifting presence. And we were talking briefly before I hit record that we've done I was lucky enough to do a creative session with you. And so I can certainly attest to the fact that you are in fact an uplifting presence. But I really wanted to hear a bit more about how and why you'd put that as a focus and a purpose in your life.
Yeah, I'm so pleased that you're drilling into that, because I put quite a lot of thought into the subtlety of the language. And really where I was coming from was that if I had anything in my purpose that was about helping people or inspiring people, I felt that implicitly that would be suggesting that I am somehow superior to others, or that others need my help, or it would create a power dynamic in my head that I wasn't comfortable with. And what I wanted to focus on was not so much how or whether I can help anybody else, or even whether anybody else should be helping me. What I really wanted to focus on in terms of my life purpose was how I want to be known for showing up. And what I decided when I set that purpose, I don't remember when I set it, but I mean, it's been years and years and years. What I decided when I set that purpose was I want to be known for showing up with my fullest, and whether that with all the flaws, with all the good and the bad, and whether that is in a moment where I can be supporting others, or whether that is in a moment where I'm receiving support. How can I receive that support with grace and with an open mind and open heart? It's really, I want to be known as a person who kind of continually steps into the terminology we use with Brené Brown is stepping into the arena. And by doing that, my hope is that other people might feel permission themselves to show up in that same way. And that's not, again, to be clear, that's not me helping them or granting any kind of largesse to anyone. It's really going, I want to live my life in a way that if other people look at that, they go, wow, I would like to live my life in that way too. And not doing the same things I'm doing, but showing up with their whole hearts and with their whole intentions and with their passions and with their dreams of the kind of world it's possible for us to build together. So yeah, thanks for asking.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And it really is actually very inspirational to hear you talk about it like that. And it's a bit similar to what we want to do with our Women's Fund. We want to shine a light on fabulous women like yourself who have a really interesting perspective on life or are doing beautiful things for our city and our country. And then just hope that it inspires other people just by showing people what they're doing, really. So thank you for sharing your time with us.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And where can people find out more about you and your courses in Boma and what you do?
Oh yeah, thanks. Definitely the best place to start is nz.boma.global, which is our website. And I personally am very easy to find on LinkedIn and Twitter are probably my two primary platforms. So absolutely welcome anyone connecting with me there.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Kaila.
Thank you.